Hello, my name is Kirk McKenzie. I'm concerned about the direction that our country and our world are going in. And after more than 20 years and recent events, I am more concerned than ever. Accordingly, I have decided to be silent no more, and through a sequence of YouTube videos to share the information I have learned. I hope you find these to be informative and helpful. Thank you.
This is a continuation of the series, Why We Are in So Much Debt, based upon the book, Money, Defending Your Prosperity. In the first video, we talked about the monetary concepts that are built into our monetary system and that are frankly destroying our prosperity. In the second, we talk about how that system has been put into place brick by brick since the founding of our country. And those two are important to understand this video, which talks about solutions. What do we do? As in any problem resolution, you first have to recognize a problem exists, and you have to diagnose it correctly. If the diagnosis is wrong, then there is no problem that's going to be solved. This was the purpose of the first two videos, Seminar 1 and Seminar 2. Next, before you even talk about solutions, you have to decide what is the objectives for the monetary reform. Then you're in a position to talk about how to accomplish those. That is the purpose of this video and another video called How to Take Your Country Back. Those four videos combined give you a complete picture of the monetary system. Finally, you need to implement. I would suggest the first objective is to restore a stable, debt-free national currency. Let's recall that we've had three types of national currency since the founding of the country. The Constitution declares the only currency to be gold and silver coin. Starting with the Civil War, the government began issuing paper. And then beginning with the National Bank Act in 1863, the bankers have been able to issue paper. The short history is that all those other kinds of currencies have been eliminated, leaving us entirely with the bank-issued, debt-monetized currency, and that's the problem. So to restore our currency, the first thing we have to do is stop printing Federal Reserve notes. The debt monetization that's built into that scheme ties the creation of money to the creation of debt. Hence, that guarantees the creation, increase, and perpetuation of debt, and perpetual debt is bondage. Now, there are those who advocate the restoration of gold and silver coin as our currency. My own opinion is, I agree. We need to legalize gold and silver coins and money. In fact, it's an interesting question to even understand. Since they are constitutional, how can it be that our government has declared them to be illegal since 1933? And we need to eliminate the tax on what would be called gold and silver appreciation. And we'll talk more about that later. Where I disagree is to say that that's going to be the only exclusive type of currency. And it's based upon the practicality. If we return to gold and silver only, then the question I put to people is that, are they prepared to pay their utility bills by going to the utility company? Or are they going to forego the ability to buy books from Amazon.com? And then we have the question, the history has been very clear, bad money chases out good, not vice versa. The second kind of currency that we've had is the government-issued paper. Now, there's problems with this currency because it can be inflated just like the banknotes, but it has one huge value, and that is that it can be printed and issued current without going into debt and interest-free. I advocate a return to what's called legal tender notes, or U.S. notes, first printed in 1862. The idea here is to stop printing Federal Reserve notes and replace them with legal tender notes issued directly by the government into the economy. Now, there's precedent for this, and it takes no change to the Constitution. It takes no act of Congress. It can be done by executive order. This was done in 1862, and we have JFK issuing his order, 11,110. There's precedent. All it takes is a president in order to move on this path. So how would we use this currency? Well, the first thing we would do is we would use it to prevent the money power from removing liquidity from our economy and thereby crippling it. Government could issue this and prohibit that from happening. Second, we can use this money to pay off the national debt and the interest. We've been accepting bank paper for a long time. Isn't it time that they accept our paper? Now we can see that the following way. This comes from a prior seminar. We have real wealth. We have this debt monetized quote unquote money, which has been responsible for the creation of debt. By replacing Federal Reserve notes with legal tender notes, we have a vehicle to pay down the debt without imploding the money supply. Next, we can use it to pay government wages and expenses. We can use it to meet Social Security and Medicare obligations. And the Treasury could use it to buy gold and silver to restore the U.S. debtory to the U.S. Treasury. And we can use it to get rid of personal debt. And we'll talk about the Jubilee decade in a moment. Now, will this work? Well, for that we can refer to 1862, the Hazard Circular circulated in London at the time. If that mischievous financial policy, which has its origin in the North American Republic, should become integrated down into a fixture, then that government will furnish its own money without cost. It will pay off its debts and be without a debt. It will become prosperous beyond precedent in the history of the civilized governments of the world. They were referring to legal tender notes. Next, we need to stop financing waste. Increasing the money supply in excess of production of real things inflates the currency and inflates the volume unnecessarily and thereby devalues its value and therefore results in increasing prices. To do this, we need to shrink government to its constitutional footprint, make a distinction between borrowing money to spend it versus borrowing money to invest. Borrowing money to invest will increase the real value of the world in line with the monetary supply and therefore will not collapse the value of the currency. It's this borrowing to spend that's a problem. Principal among these is the fact that we've been in a state of war almost perpetually since the Civil War. Second biggest waste of our money is socialism. It does not create wealth, it just simply moves it around. The usury or interest charge on the debt is also not building anything. And things such as the public funding and government employment retirement benefits. We're paying benefits to people who are no longer working or producing any value. We also need to make the bank management, their board members, and controlling shareholders personally bonded and liable for failure of their banks. If the banks fail, then the first people to lose their homes and their lifetime savings and all of their assets should be the bankers. And finally, we need to end all handouts, subsidies, loans, and services to non-citizens. We also need to make ours a sovereign currency, and this can be done by disentangling our currency from foreign interests. Prohibit foreign ownership or influence on any part of the U.S. monetary system. Prohibit foreign loans being given out that are backed ultimately by the American people in our currency. This is crazy, to make the American people liable for loans that are made to foreign governments and foreign banks. And prohibit participation in international banking conferences, such as the G8 conference. Replace free trade with fair trade. The only thing that free trade has done is freely export our know-how, our technologies, our industries, and our jobs. And it is ruining us. We are a nation that no longer has the ability to manufacture our own, and as a result, We are completely dependent upon other and losing our money, and this is clear in the trade deficits. The second objective, we have to disarm the money power. If we in fact reform the monetary system but they remain in control, we accomplish nothing. The best way to do this is repeal the Revolution of 1913. Repeal the 16th Amendment, or investigate whether or not it was in fact duly ratified or in fact creates a mandatory federal income tax. We need to repeal the 17th Amendment and the Federal Reserve Act. As shown in the prior presentation, the impact of those three changes was to make a group of international bankers supreme. They in turn have power over our political process and the nomination of presidents and the control of our federal government. And the federal government increasingly is taking control of the people and pushing them down to the bottom. Yet it's the people and their labor that create all the value in our economy. And unfortunately, their labor does nothing more than enrich and empower the international bankers. By repealing the 1913 Revolution, we can put the states back into Congress, remove the international bankers, and begin the process of restoring a government based upon the original precepts. That is, a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, who would pay their taxes using a debt and interest-free currency. The taxes would be uniform, not progressive. They would be citizens of their sovereign states, and the states in turn would pass off this money to the federal government, with the states having a clear ability to decide on the federal government policies. There is a move to audit the Fed, and although I do not believe this is the ultimate solution, it is a good one for public awareness. Understand that the Federal Reserve banks are privately owned corporations, and they have refused to be audited. They have never been audited, even despite the efforts of congressmen and senators. And they basically go about their business without any form of government intervention. If we get the audit, it'll succeed because the data and findings will begin to wake up the public interests. And if the Fed is successfully able once again to refuse these audits, it also will raise awareness of the problem that we have an entity in the United States that refuses any kind of government oversight. We need to audit the Federal Reserve Bank of New York especially, because that's where the control is. We need to know who owns the shares in these Federal Reserve banks and the banks that own that. We need to know who is in control of those entities, including foreign interests. We need their balance sheets, their income statements, and a history of their major transactions. Third, we need to restore an honest and fair tax system. To do this, we eliminate the inflation tax. In other words, we calculate capital gains in gold and silver constant dollars, not in inflated dollars. We eliminate the death tax. This is nothing more than a Marxist scheme to take away private property and make sure that each new generation begins in debt. Eliminate the alternative minimum tax, which is nothing more than the doubly progressive tax. Second, we need to have an honest answer to the question, do we have a voluntary tax system? The fourth objective I would suggest is that we need to restore private property. Now, some people may say, well, we already have private property, but the fact of the matter is that even though we call ourselves homeowners, 95% of homes are under mortgage, which means that people essentially are paying rent. They're laboring on behalf of the bankers. And through the policies of inflation and a death tax, they ensure that that perpetuates. The goal then is to reverse the abolition of private property, the Marxist doctrine to take the property away from the people. The proposal is a Jubilee decade. This would be a 10-year period of time where you have a national program every bit as big as and important as Kennedy's vision to land on the moon. The vision here is that we would eliminate the home mortgages for all of the U.S. citizens within a period of 10 years. Participation would be voluntary, and it be limited to natural-born or lawful U.S. citizens. The governments would buy existing loans by using U.S. notes or legal tender notes. They would then substitute a new loan in its place, which would be a 10-year term loan at 1.5% interest. The goal here is to provide a loan that does not increase the monthly payment, but dramatically accelerates the payoff of debt. A 0.5% interest is more than enough to service a loan, which means it will continue to pay for the local banks, the mortgage brokers, and the appraisers, and everyone that's currently in the system. It's not intended to be a subsidy or a handout. If people stop paying, then they'll go through the foreclosure process. This could be handled through the existing infrastructure and the existing personnel that's in place and distributed across the nation, and be subject to existing standards and procedures. The fifth objective is don't destroy the economy in the transition. History has shown us that when the banks don't like the policies being implemented by the federal government, they go to war against the nation, but they do this in an economic fashion by contracting. They bring about an economic distress in order to force Congress and the president to come to terms with what the banks want. The transition must be done carefully by a team of people, and those people must understand, be fearless, act with boldness, inject liquidity to counter shortages created by banks, and in fact, go even further and prosecute counter responses from the money power. It gets down to the choice of a president. We need an Andrew Jackson. Sixth, in order to accomplish all those, we must restore an honest government, people of principle and character, and dedicated to constitutional principles. In order for this to occur, we need a massive awakening, and that is beginning with the process of this video and others. Second, we need an elected president and a swing vote of congressmen and senators that will support that president. Third, we need to reform the mechanism by which people finance their campaigns. Today, our representatives can receive money from virtually anywhere, and we know from the Clinton administration that even included foreign countries. But what company in the world would allow their employees to obtain as much as 80 or 90% or more of their income from outside the corporation? It's a clear conflict of interest. And our representatives, if they're truly going to represent us, should be prohibited from obtaining any money from anybody but their constituents. Once we elect good people to government, we need to support them and defend them. This can't be a situation like a football game. Football game, you have 24 players on the field playing pretty hard and 100,000 people watching. We're not going to win that way. We need to all get down on the field and help. To recap, the objectives that I would propose is to restore a stable, debt-free national currency, disarm the money power, restore an honest and fair tax system, restore private property, don't destroy the economy in the transition, and elect the right president in 2012. We have basically two options. Glenn Beck is one of the nation's most important people. He has done as much as anybody to awaken the people to understand that perhaps things are going in the direction not by accident or by the ignorance of our representatives, but by intentional design. But after awakening the American people, he proposes the following solution. Put down your signs, take off your t-shirts, go home and pray, suggesting that somehow it's a default in the character of the American people. Downsize and start home canning. In effect, capitulate. I have a different vision for the future of our country, and I hope you share that with me. And that vision is that we fight for our liberty and our prosperity, and that we restore our country and ideals and prosperity. And to do this, we must reform the monetary system. The choice is simple: capitulate or restore. The monetary system affects everybody. It doesn't matter whether you're young or you're old, you're a minority or a majority, you're a citizen or an immigrant, male or female, you're a member of management or labor, you work for the government or for private industry, or you're a union member or not. They have successfully divided and thereby conquered the American people by fighting little differences, magnifying them way out of proportion, putting into place systems that almost guarantee a certain amount of conflict. If we really study the situation, then we come to the following conclusion. We're all in the same box. We're all victims. And on the opposite side is a very small group of people who would like to be rulers of us all. And what they have done to empower themselves is they seize control of the money in almost every country. If we end their control over money, they lose their power and we will regain our freedom and our unity. It's up to you now. I've done what I can to get the message out. I need your help now to make the truth go viral. Some things that you need to do. First, seek out new sources of information like you're doing watching this video and stop relying on television. I mean, what good has that done us? And start listening to other people. There's going to be people you never heard of because they don't get invited to talk on TV. And they're people that don't have producers and production departments, so what they produce may not be the most professional and have all the camera angles and all the speeches and copies of this, that, and the other. But that does not mean that their message isn't important. Keep an open mind. They're likely going to begin telling you things you never heard about before and that conflict with what your understanding of the world is. But if you want to learn the truth, then be a juror, not a judge. It is our normal inclination when people talk to us to immediately discount what they say if it doesn't agree with what we already believe. And this is a fundamental flaw. If we want to understand the truth, we must be jurors. Turn off that judge and instead listen to what the person is saying, focus on what they're trying to communicate, what information they have to convey or to support their ideas, what are the implications, and then you can be the judge. Plenty of time to be the judge, but it's important to be the juror first. Be prepared to reevaluate everything, and that means keep an open mind about everything. Our history, the motives of people, even who is good and who is bad. History is written by the winners, but only for a time. You can fool some of the people all the time. You can fool all the people some of the time. But you cannot fool all the people all the time. Here is an example in this little video clip that I think is worth showing.
A part of that plan, of course, is to induce the gradual surrender of American sovereignty, piece by piece and step by step, to various international organizations, of which the United Nations is the outstanding but far from the only example. Now, here are the aims for the United States. 1, greatly expanded government spending for every conceivable means of getting rid of ever larger sums of American money as wastefully as possible. 2, higher and then much higher taxes. 3, an increasingly unbalanced budget despite the higher taxes. 4, wild inflation of our currency. 5, government controls of prices, wages, and materials, supposedly to combat inflation. 6, greatly increased socialistic controls over every operation of our economy and every activity of our daily lives. This is to be accompanied naturally and automatically by a correspondingly huge increase in the size of our bureaucracy and in both the cost and reach of our domestic government. 7, far more centralization of power in Washington and the practical elimination of our state lines. There is a many-faceted drive at work to have our state lines eventually mean no more within the nation than our county lines do now within the states. 8, the steady advance of federal aid to and control over our educational system, leading to complete federalization of our public education. 9, a constant hammering into the American consciousness of the horror of modern warfare, the beauties and the absolute necessity of peace, peace always on communist terms, of course. And 10, the consequent willingness of the American people to allow the steps of appeasement by our government which amount to a piecemeal surrender of the rest of the free world and of the United States itself.
This speech was given by Robert Welch in 1958. He was the founder of the John Birch Society. Some 50 years later, we now have the perspective to analyze whether he was telling us the truth or his detractors. So here's what you can do. First, learn. Second, use the information learned to protect yourself and your family. But that's not enough this time around. It does you no good to be on the high point of the Titanic. We must work together to defend our country. Third, support my efforts and the efforts of others like myself who are trying to make a difference. Then use the information that we have provided to inform others. Help the information and the truth go viral. And finally, we hope to tilt the public opinion in a way that will begin to elect the kind of people that we need, some refounders, to run our country. So let's talk in more detail about how you can learn. The single best book you can probably read on the topic of money is mine, called Money Defending Your Prosperity. There's also a companion pocketbook called Follow the Money. DVDs are available, as well as brochures. If you prefer to listen, I have radio interviews with Brian Lee of KYNO, Randall Turner of Money in America, Ernest Hancock of Liberty News Radio, and Dr. Stan Monteith of Radio Liberty. Those are all available from silentnomorepublications.com. Other books I would recommend: The Financial Catechism and History of the Financial Legislation of the United States from 1862 to 1882. That was first published in 1882. The Coming Battle, first published in 1899, which has been resurrected. The Secrets of the Federal Reserve, first published by Eustace Mullins in 1952. And The Creature from Jekyll Island by G. Edward Griffin, published in 1994. Watch my YouTube videos. The first series, Why We Are in So Much Debt, this is part 1. Part 2. And part 3, the one that you're currently watching. Also watch the other video, How to Take Our Country Back. These 4 videos together comprise a complete story. And finally, there is a number of other great videos that are available on YouTube that are extremely informative. You can find all those and more simply by going to www.youtube.com/user/silentnomorepubs. Pubs being an abbreviation for publications. 2, support my efforts and those of others who are fighting for your liberty. It makes no sense for you to sit back and watch them and enjoy the game. You need to help them. They got people who are willing to lead, but you have to support them. Find them and then support them. Make some donations if you can. where they have books like myself and others, or things that they have for sale, buy them. If they have email subscription list, subscribe, and I have one. If you want, you can drop me an email and I'll add you to that. I think it's important to thank these people, and particularly the politicians. It's our normal inclination to go after those that we don't like and send faxes and emails and petitions against them, but in fact that does no good. Far better would be to identify the people who are fighting for you and thank them, and help you get this information on YouTube reposted. And finally, when they come under attack, you're under attack, so make sure that you defend them. Help the truth go viral. When you're finished watching this video, come back to the first segment and click the share button. And up pops a window with a link that you can incorporate into your emails and on your websites and in your Facebook pages and on your Twitter accounts and so forth. Also, if you're a website designer, click the embed button, and up comes the script that you can copy and paste into your website so these videos are available directly from your website. The next things require you to have a YouTube account. If you don't have one, click the Create Account button, or if you do, go ahead and sign in. Once you've done that, give the video a thumbs up, and particularly the first video in the series. Add it to your favorites list. Subscribe to my channel so you'll be notified of any future videos. And add positive comments in the comment box below. These positive comments will help other people decide to make the investment, spend the time to watch. Also, go ahead and visit my YouTube page called Silent No More Pub. Simply by clicking on it, it appears above any of my videos. Make sure that you watch all segments on the Why We Are in So Much Debt series. And you can do this also by just simply putting the terms in the search box and clicking the search button. Next, elect the right people. And you have to make the monetary system an issue, because right now it's not. And nobody is going to make it an issue if the people don't. Television is avoiding it. The politicians do not want to talk about it. The only people that can force this issue onto the table is the people. So if you're an activist, when you're vetting candidates, you question them. You find out what they understand about the system. Just making promises to reduce the debt is worth nothing if they don't understand how the system works. If you find that their will is there, but their knowledge is a little shaky, educate them. Get them to watch these videos. Get them to read the book. And then after they do, question them again. See where they stand. Do they understand? And if they do, are they for or against? And in town halls and other forums, stand up and boldly ask questions about the understanding and their commitment to reforming the monetary system. Support only those candidates that commit. Ultimately, we all have a limited amount of money and time, so make it count. And help those candidates increase their public awareness so that we can encourage people to vote for them. I want to thank you for your time. I hope you have found this series of videos to be helpful and that you decide to engage. And if you wish to communicate with me, feel free to drop me an email at author@silentnomorepublications.com. Thank you.